Welcome to Ridgewood Talks. Through this podcast, we will be introducing you to some of the leaders and legends in our village. We'll keep you updated about fascinating local events. We'll dig into the town's hot topics and so much more. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Jeannie Johnson, the founder of Ridgewood Talks and Ridgewood Walks. The goal of these initiatives is to create a kinder, more connected, and more vibrant community. I'm thrilled to be hosting this podcast with my good friend and all-around wonderful guy, Jordan Kaufman. We look forward to meeting with you weekly and hearing your thoughts on who and what you'd like to learn about in our beautiful hometown. For now, be kind, do good, and enjoy this episode. Here we go.
Good afternoon. I'm Rosie McCooe, and I am the guest host today for Ridgewood Talks. I am absolutely thrilled today to have two amazing guests with me. New York Times instant best-selling author Fiona Davis, who's here to talk about her new book that was published in January 2025, The Stolen Queen, and her publicist Kathleen Carter, who is a Ridgewood resident and founder and CEO of Kathleen Carter Communications. Ladies, I'm delighted to have you here today. We are here to talk about all of Fiona's books, as well as to promote the College Club of Northern New Jersey's upcoming annual event, our author luncheon, which will be held on April 28th at Seasons in Washington Township. You can buy your tickets on our website, collegeclubofnorthernnewjersey.org, and we hope you will support us. We expect the luncheon to sell out, and we will be hosting Fiona Davis, and her publicist will be at the event signing copies of the new book. And it's going to be a wonderful event. Ladies, thank you so much for coming to Ridgewood and joining us for this podcast. Fiona, thank you for joining us via New York City, via Zoom, and being with us as well. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day of writing to be with us. So thank you.
Thank you. No, I'm thrilled to be here, and it's wonderful to support such a wonderful organization for sure.
Yes, College Club has been around since 1913, and it's an all-women's organization. So, and I've been an active member for about 20 years, so I'm very happy to be promoting this event and to have you as our esteemed guest on April 28th. So again, thank you.
Yeah.
And so let's get into it. You have an instant best-selling New York Times book. How does it become an instant? How does that happen?
Lots of planning, hard work, tireless effort on Fiona's part. Months and months of planning go into the launch of a book, and Fiona doesn't say no to anything. She travels the country, she writes essays, she does tons of podcast interviews, and she's built such a devoted following over the course of her career. So it's really just a testament to her writing, to her fans, and to the appeal of her books.
Yes, I've been enjoying following you. So, yeah, it's been really amazing. You're just out there and promoting your wonderful books. This is such a terrific book.
Thank you. What's fun is that it's been a kind of a slow liftoff since my first book, which was 8 books ago. And so in the beginning, no one knows who you are, and you just want to kind of get the word out there that you wrote a book. And so I remember just saying yes to anyone who would invite me. So I went to all the libraries on Long Island, and that's where the readers were, talking to libraries, going into independent bookstores. And so slowly building up readership has been such a wonderful way to go about this, because I wasn't, out of the gate this huge bestseller. So I had my time to get my sea legs and figure out what I'm talking about, what I'm writing about, what really kind of what I'm passionate about and what goes into the books. And hopefully that passion, readers pick it up. And then, of course, to meet readers in person and talk about it is half the fun.
Yeah, that's terrific. And your debut novel, The Dollhouse, 2017, is that correct? And
Sounds
Kathleen's
about right.
been with you since then, right? You've been her publicist since the
Yeah.
beginning. That's wonderful. What a great relationship you two must have, right?
Yeah, it's pretty special.
It's wonderful. And I wouldn't make a move without checking with Kathleen first, just because she has such a great knowledge of the book world in a way that a writer may not, because we're kind of in a silo writing our books. I talk to other writers, but the whole business of writing, my agent and my publicist are the ones, my editor are the ones who really drive that. And so it's an incredible team and pretty much all women.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, and it's clear in your writing, right? You favor women and you write about strong women, which is just wonderful.
Yeah.
So how did you launch your writing career? Because I believe this is you haven't always been a writer. What did you do before you were a writer?
Yeah, before I was a writer, I was an actress in New York City for about 10 years, which was a lot of fun. And, collaborating with other actors and directors, and they're all still my best friends today, which is kind of wonderful. But then I thought I should probably try something else as I got a little older and aged out of being the ingenue. And I went to Columbia Journalism School. And that was really where I learned how to write, where I learned how to find sources, interview them, and come up with a narrative arc in a story. But this was nonfiction, right? Which is different. They're two different ballgames. And about 15 years into that career, I just stumbled upon a story which I thought would be a great book. And I couldn't shake it. Like I thought about it all the time and I wanted to read that book. And instead I thought, okay, let me try writing it. And it'll be a secret. I'm not going to tell a soul. And if it's terrible, it doesn't matter. And I learned everything I could about writing. I went to Gotham Writers Workshop and took classes on short stories, just anything I could to learn how to do fiction. Because, as a journalist, you're not supposed to make up dialogue. That's wrong. And of course, that's all you do as a writer. You're just letting things flow and tapping into your imagination. And so that became my first book, The Dollhouse. And after a lot of edits and a lot of rewrites, it was ready to be published.
And that takes place in the Barbizon Hotel, correct, for women?
Yes.
So
Yes.
more great female characters. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I thought it'd be fun to write about that building because in 2005, when it went condo, there were still some ladies who'd lived there for decades. And I just loved that dynamic of these women living in the hotel now that it was a condo. And what was that dynamic within the residents? And I thought this would be a great dual timeline, which I love because then you can kind of compare and contrast how things have changed over time and how they haven't. Like that when it was a hotel, you couldn't wear pants across the lobby. You would you'd be sent back upstairs to put on a skirt up until I think the 60s or 70s. Right. And just to show that and have people go, my goodness, that.
And this is New York's progressive New York City, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But, and now, of course, you wouldn't imagine that seems crazy. But there were rules. All the women who went to Katie Gibbs Secretarial School who lived in the Barbizon, they always wore white gloves and stockings. There were all these interesting rules that really kept women in a certain position where they were told what to do and how to do it. And I love the fact that we can look back and go, oh, no, that wouldn't work today.
Yeah. And you have created so many defiant characters. I mean, thank you so much for writing these incredible women who are strong and feisty and smart and resourceful and passionate and compassionate. I mean, your female characters just jump out at you. And I think we all want to be these women, right?
Yeah.
We all want to be these leaders and these people, rule breakers. And you really seem to have accomplished that so well.
Thank you. I think what it is, all of the characters start in a place of vulnerability where they're not leaders. They don't know what they're doing. They're unsure of their place in the world. And I think as a reader, it's so fascinating to watch someone's journey and the arc of their character and how they ended up being what they were. And so, yeah, whether it's, an artist or a journalist or just a wife and mom, it's really fun finding these stories that are inspired by real life and then placing them in these iconic buildings in New York City and just seeing what bubbles up.
And are you the character Laura in Lions of Fifth Avenue? You must relate to her in many, many ways.
Yeah, so Laura is a character who, as I was researching the New York Public Library, I learned that when they built it, they included this 7-room apartment inside where the superintendent and his family lived. And I thought, what a great idea for a book. So Laura is the wife of the superintendent. It's the 1910s. The library really just opened. And so it's all fresh and new. And And she's a wife and mom, but she wants something more. And so she applies to Columbia Journalism School, which was open right then in 1913. And she gets in. And just, the research of learning about how Columbia in the 1910s, if you were a woman going to school there, you would get assigned things at the orphanage while the men were allowed to go and do murders and politics. But women did not do that, that there was this, two different tracks depending on your gender. And so, yeah, it's part of me, the journalist part of me is definitely in that book of wanting to I think that's why I write these books, wanting to get to the bottom of things and find out what really happened. And, there's a sense of fairness and justice and bringing that to light. And so Laura is, yeah, I could definitely see she's part of me.
And hopefully things have changed at the journalism school.
Oh,
by
it was
the time
the
you
best
went there.
experience of my life going there. I have to say that. It was
Yeah.
the year-long master's program. It's intense. It's incredible. They have such high standards that you learn so much about ethics and, why journalism matters in the world, which is so important today. And it's an incredible program. I highly recommend it.
And I think another thing that Fiona does in her books, she does present these very strong female characters, but she's also retelling history through a female lens. Mm-hmm. We have a certain understanding of the events of the past and the history of some of these buildings in New York City, as has been told to us through history largely dictated by men. And so in her books, she's presenting what a woman's experience would have been in that building at that time in history. And I think that's such a fresh approach. And that's why her fans are so hungry for more from her, because it's so interesting to see what the experience would have been for a woman in the 20s or in the 80s or in the 1880s in a certain setting in one of her books.
Yeah, I think it's about time travel, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would love to time travel back to the 1880s and see what the Dakota was like when it was very, brand new, just built, towering over the Upper West Side where there are no other buildings like it. And so for me, okay, what was the point of view of the head housekeeper back then? Let me see if I can tap into that. And it's just so much to bring that to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this... and I even liked going back to 1978. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I grew up in the 70s, and I'm like, oh gosh, we didn't have cell phones. We were calling people on the payphone. We were meeting at the corner. When you said you're going to meet someone, you would actually meet someone. So even for me, the time travel back to 1978 with Diana Vreeland and the Met Gala and all that, I was wrapped up in that as well. And I had just as much fun with that era. Because New York was so different then, as you know.
Yeah, I was born in the 60s. So, writing about this 78 and, if my character needs to go buy a plane ticket, it's like, oh, no, you can't. You don't get it off the internet. You have to go to a travel agency. And remember those, the tickets you get, carbon paper. Yeah. Just it brings back so many memories when you do that.
Yeah, all those details. And just thinking about in lines of Fifth Avenue when she would go downtown, like, how would she get down there? What was the train system like? What was the, taxi service like? All those things. It really, so much has changed in just 100 years. It's really remarkable. And my father was born in 1914. So when you wrote that, I was like, oh, just trying to picture all of that. Just such a different world and different time.
Yeah.
Right. New York City with the L train, which was the elevated train before the subway, and that went all the way up here to the Upper West Side. And and you have to get those right, because otherwise readers will tell you. You have to make sure you get the details right.
They will.
And let's talk about The Stolen Queen. It's your latest book, was just published in January. Such a fascinating story. You bring us to this exotic land of Egypt, which I certainly don't know much about. So what was your inspiration for that? How did you get there?
Yeah, I usually start with the building first. And so I wanted to set a building at the Met, but it's pretty intimidating. And I wasn't sure of my way in. And then I realized it would be fun to write about the Egyptian wing and also the Met Gala, because they're so different, those two. They're exact opposites, even though they're in the same building. And the Met Gala, of course, raises money for the Costume Institute. And And so, yeah, that it was from looking at the Met from all these different angles and figuring out what was the fun way in. And it's nice working with a publicist, because then if I tell Kathleen, okay, I'm going to do it at the Met, and she's already brainstorming ideas of, what we can do to help kind of get the word out about the book once it's ready to go.
And tell us about the real history behind this story, because I know it is based on a female pharaoh who really existed.
Yeah. Well, it's the main character is this character, Charlotte, and she's the associate curator in the Egyptian art collection. And she's 60 years old and kind of good at her job, but has been doing it a long time, does all the work, gets none of the glory. And she is, in fact, inspired by a real life woman named Charlotte de Roche-Noblecourt. And she was a French resistance fighter in World War II. She helped save all this artwork from the Louvre. And then she went to Egypt and was this incredible archaeologist and had these amazing finds. And this was in the 1930s. And I thought, oh, it'd be great to have we could go back in time, since I like those dual timelines, to the 1930s. And there's a wonderful book out by Lynn Olson called Empress of the Nile. And it's all about this woman, this archaeologist. And so I got lots of inspiration for young Charlotte from that book and for that time period. And so she's one of the real life inspirations. And as part of her work as a curator, she's obsessed with this female pharaoh named Hatshepsut, who really existed. In the book, I rename her Hatherkare, because the actual scholars and researchers and workers who discovered everything that Charlotte discovers about this rare female pharaoh, I didn't want to take away from what they'd done, their accomplishments. I wanted to give credit where credit was due, which I do in the author's note. But if you know about Hatshepsut's history, as you read it, you'll start picking it up. I think that's her. And so she, ruled very successfully after her husband died, and the only heir to the throne was this infant child of a concubine. And so she ruled and took over as regent, and she did it really well. But then, after she died, suddenly her statues were hacked and she kind of disappeared from history. And then later, they said, oh, well, it was probably because the stepson was really mad that she usurped his power. And then, of course, you jump ahead to when scholars are realizing, oh, no, there's a couple of reasons why that doesn't make sense. And then suddenly the narrative changes, and suddenly she is, again, this revered leader. And so as a female pharaoh, I was obsessed, as Charlotte is, about how her reputation and her name changed over time, even long after she died, right? But she had this staying power because she was, in fact, a fearless leader.
And she did great things, right? Egypt was flourishing under her rule.
Yeah, there was peace, there was prosperity, there was international trade, there were all of these advances in art and architecture. She did great, great things that for years were completely ignored.
Well, I'm so glad she got her comeuppance at the end. I was like, yes. And even thinking about Charlotte, that 40-year journey that she had and how much things had changed over time. That was, I loved her journey too. And I like that her friend was a playwright. I love that.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, she, Charlotte was really fun to write because she is obsessed. She thinks she can really forward her career by publishing these new findings that she's discovered about the female pharaoh. But of course, she's stymied at every turn by her boss, who isn't the nicest of guys. And he's fictional. Everyone's made up. And so, it was fun to do that. And also to show in terms of how things have changed over time. For example, in ancient Egypt, a woman could get divorced with no problem. She could have a child out of wedlock, no worries. She could have property. She could keep her children if she got divorced. And then you compare it to Charlotte's age in the 1970s, where in the mid-70s, a woman couldn't get a loan or a mortgage without a man co-signing. Yeah. And I just love seeing these cycles of how things change, and then we go backwards, and then we go forwards, and bringing them to the page.
Yeah, you do a remarkable job of that. You really do. And obviously this book is set in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and there's a lot of talk of art reparation, and I don't know how you feel about that or if you want to talk about that, but of course the age-old question of where does the original art belong and who's best to take care of it?
Yeah, it's such a good question. In fact, there's a huge article in the New York Times today
Yes.
about the profile of the man who's taken over as he's the man who determines the provenance of all these works that they're unsure whether they were stolen or looted or are they legitimate. The Met actually own them. And it's not only the Met that's grappling with this, it's the British Museum, it's all the major museums across the world are rethinking what their role is as stewards of art. Should they keep this art that may have been taken, for example, the Benin bronzes were stolen from what's now modern Nigeria in this terrible bloody occupation that the British did. And they want them back. But it's, there's questions raised about how do you get them back? What if the place doesn't have a museum to put them? What if they end up in the hands of, some billionaire who spirits it away and puts it on his yacht? These are all questions that everyone's grappling with. But the Manhattan DA has a whole office that's devoted to reclaiming stolen art. And it's so interesting because, there was one major collector who had his living room and all these photographs from his apartment in a magazine. And someone spotted all this looted art in it. And he was, rounded up and the art was returned. So it's a struggle on all levels today to figure out what should go where and who owns it.
Yeah, it's tough. And of course, every major museum thinks, oh, I should be the boss of this material because I have the best facility or the best
I
way
think
to
they
take care of
used
it.
to. I think that used to be the prevailing thought, but I think it's changed a lot. And just the fact that, the Met has this person who that's his job is to figure this out and do it in a way that's thoughtful is, really terrific. And I'm sure Kathleen, as a publicist, having them have that big profile in the New York Times is really good because it shows that they're, right.
There's awareness. There's awareness.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah.
And your stolen queen, well, one of the stolen queens in here is the Cerulean Queen, but based on a true story, something that was taken at the Met.
It's inspired there. It's inspired by this story of I think it was in the 1980s, or even a little before that. There was this Roman statue, and someone took the head off it and somehow got it out of the building. And this was before there were cameras or anything like that. And there's this big hunt for it, and they eventually found it in a locker in Grand Central. When they had lockers in Grand Central.
Yes, I remember that.
Right. And so, and there are some really interesting little thefts that happened around then. There was another one where these rings were stolen, and they found out because they were stolen by a couple kids, teenagers. And what they did is there was like a little hole in the vitrine in the glass that was holding them, that they were able to slip in their programs, the map to the Met in it, and then they jiggled it and the rings fell off whatever was holding them onto the map, and they just slid it out. And then unfortunately they went to a jeweler just on Lexington Avenue, not far away, who recognized them.
Oh my goodness.
And then he called the Met and said, I have the rings, but he tried to blackmail the Met. Oh. And that didn't go over well.
Yeah, no,
so,
right.
Since then there have not been any, any thefts like that. They have a whole security team in place. They have, that doesn't happen. But my book, since it's 1978, they can get away with a little theft.
Yeah. And I really love your female relationships in the book as well. Annie becomes the mother to her mother, right? The roles are reversed. Mm-hmm. And then Charlotte is missing her daughter, her entire daughter's life, which is so heart-wrenching. Not something you get over easily or quickly. So I really love how you create these different relationships and how women really depend on other women, and this is very real. These are very real scenarios. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah. Annie's definitely the parentified child, where her mom is a former model and she, needs a lot of attention. And at a certain point in the book, Annie needs to figure out, does she want to step out and become independent, and she has to figure out how to be a woman in the world because she has no one to show her. And so she looks for mentors. So she looks to Deanna Vreeland, who's not exactly the best mentor for her at that moment. And then she finds Charlotte, and she's just looking for someone to glom on to say, all right, how do you do this? She's 19, she's unqualified for her job, and she's really out on her own. But I love that Charlotte and Annie are complete opposites. And over the course of the book, they come together because they have a common pursuit of this stolen artifact. And that they, you know, open up to each other in a way that they never would have expected.
They're both so resilient too, though, despite how different they are. That's one thing that shines through about both of them from their different experiences. They're both super resilient. And I know just in various talks that she's given and book clubs that I've been involved with that have read the book, that's something that readers are picking up on too, with Annie and Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, when her leaving that party at the costume, the party, I was like, oh, that poor kid. You know, you just wanted to die for her because she went out,
I know,
all confident in her gorgeous dress, and then she ruined the party.
I know. For that scene, I just thought, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen at a Costume Institute Met Gala? And I thought, okay, that'll do. And then it's so much fun to write. I couldn't wait to get to that scene. No spoilers, but we couldn't wait I couldn't wait to get to that scene and you know, write about it, because it was so much fun. It's everything that the Met Gala is not, which is, you know, it's very organized and classy, and here it just goes haywire.
Right. Oh my gosh, that was such a great. And I was like, everything's going her way. I'm so happy for her.
But speaking of mentors, and Kathleen, I'm sure you probably have one or two in your career. But, you know, I know there have been people who have helped me with each step of the way to get me to where I needed to be. And so to write that in the book, of having someone doing the same thing and figuring out her way in the world, was very important. But Kathleen, I imagine in your business, it's similar.
Yeah. I mean, I was fortunate in that I've always been sort of an independent publicist. I've never worked at a major publishing house, but my first job was at a female-owned small boutique book PR firm, and it was called Goldberg McDuffie Communications. And Goldberg and McDuffie were both women, and they are definitely mentors. But the entire office was women, and so some of the closest people to me personally and professionally, still almost 20 years later, are those women that I learned how to do this job from. And that's where I started working with Fiona at that office. And then when I started my firm, she graciously came with me. So yeah, I think it's so necessary to have mentors. And I think as women, other strong women who, you know, help pave the way and
want you to succeed.
And want you to succeed. That's huge. Yeah.
We have to do that.
Yeah. Because there's definitely people who get in the way or try to make it more difficult. So
yeah, and it's interesting because even in the book world, the historical fiction world, there's so many other women writers who are so supportive. We have a whole community of us who pull together when anyone's in trouble and support them and do whatever we can, and you know, just do Zooms where we answer questions and help each other up, because you know, there's people below you in the, you know, the ladder of publishing historical fiction. There's people way above you, and anyone who can reach down and offer a hand, I think it's just a marvelous way to work together.
Yeah, there's room for everybody.
Yeah,
right. Really, ultimately. So you've written, so your books are focused on these architectural iconic buildings in New York City, the Dakota, the Metropolitan Museum, Radio City, the Frick Museum, among others. How did that come about?
Yeah, you know, it wasn't planned, to be honest. The first book about the Dakota, about the Dollhouse, about the Barbizon Hotel for Women, I just thought that would be a great place to set a book. And then after that, I was walking by the Dakota and I thought, ooh, I'd love to get in there. And eventually made my way in, which was not easy. And just the, you know, I think it's a matter of, I love to snoop, you know, I love to get in buildings and see what was it like to be a maid there? Where did they live? You know, what's the grandest apartment there? What's that like? And then just thinking about the ghosts of generations past who haunt it. And, what was it like for someone in the 20s? And this really, I think, stems from my parents, who are both English. And we would go back to England every few years to visit relatives. And we'd be driving all around the country and, these long car rides. And my brother and myself, we'd start beating each other up. And so they'd pull over and let us run around in some grand estate or some ruin or an old castle. And just how old everything was just blew my mind, coming from America. And so I think buildings just have always attracted me, and somehow I became the building person. It's not something that I planned. And people say, "Oh, do you have a binder full of buildings that you keep for the next book?" And I don't. I just kind of wing it from book to book.
Can I give you some suggestions?
Oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah, everybody has their favorites. It's so interesting.
I bet. Oh, it's a great hook.
Yeah.
It's like, of course I want to read about that,
Yeah, and I think the success of the Dollhouse and then the book about the Dakota, it just sort of then people couldn't resist and were just expecting like, okay, so what building is she going to do next? Like where? And she would give author talks and the questions that would come up or suggestions that would come up of, I think you should do one about this or what about that? And some ideas have come from those various suggestions, like the 80-year-old Rockette who wrote a personal letter to Fiona about meeting her husband there as a Rockette for the Spectacular, and that was such a cool connection to have made. And she even participated in a couple of the events with Fiona.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really neat. So
yeah. Oh, it's incredible. The women that I've met who I've talked to, like a 99-year-old actress who'd lived through the McCarthy era here in New York City, or Sandy the Rockette, who'd, had so many great stories and all of this archival material that she very generously shared with me. It's been so much fun. And each book is a standalone. You don't have to read them in any order. They all stand alone, very separately, different eras, different women. And it's really just what building you're drawn to and what are the secrets and what are the surprises. And with each book,
there's definitely mystery around all of them. Yeah. There's always some intrigue where, like, I'm not scared, but I just can't wait to keep going. Like, and I love how you end the chapters on one era and then you have to go back and you have to keep reading to get back to that timeline.
I love a page turner.
It's a great device how you craft that. And you just want to go back and like, wait, what's happening next? Mm-hmm. And like I
love Agatha Christie.
Yeah,
it's so
fun.
I love Agatha Christie growing up, right?
It's so fun. You really keep the writer engaged. So what's next? Like, what is next? Do you have a building in mind? Are you
I do.
Try and get away from that, or?
It's the exact opposite of the Met. It's a building that hardly anyone knows about. It's the oldest house in Manhattan. It's called the Morris-Jumel Mansion. It's this beautiful mansion with white columns. It looks like it belongs in Georgia. It's set on this beautiful garden. And it's uptown, so it doesn't get a lot of tourists. And it has a wonderful history. It was the headquarters for George Washington during the Revolutionary War for a few months. And then it became owned by this woman, Eliza Jumel. And she was born the daughter of a prostitute in Rhode Island. She came to New York in the early 1800s. And she eventually became the richest woman in New York because she was so good at real estate, buying and selling real estate.
I love that.
She's a real character. I adore her. Her second husband was Aaron Burr, who she divorced because he was taking her money and she didn't like that, and hired as her divorce attorney Alexander Hamilton Jr.
Oh my God.
So there's a lot. And it's great. Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote some of Hamilton in Aaron Burr's bedroom in the mansion to kind of channel him.
Yes.
So it's a hidden secret, and I can't wait to bring it to life because it needs attention, it needs some love, and it needs some support.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Another great female character. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
particularly real estate. I love that. That's great. And any, like, are we doing Netflix? Are we bringing page to screen? Anything in the works?
that would be great. There's been some interest. We'll see what happens. Historical fiction is expensive to do,
Yes.
but I think there's a real appetite for it. When you look at Bridgerton, and Queen's Gambit and, The Gilded Age. There's so much out there that I think has a wide audience that, I think it'd be great.
All right. Yeah. Come on, Kathleen.
All right, I'll get right on it.
Well, I think what's nice with this series now is you get your whole book in. You know what I mean? You don't have to edit it down to a 2-hour movie.
Right.
You can
Limited
do the
series.
whole book.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. And it's wonderful. I'm watching Long Bright River now, which is not historical, but it's a great book, and they did a great job of it's really terrific. But it's fun when a book is starting to come out because, we're trying to find publicity anywhere we can. And Kathleen came upon a really good idea for that is not our typical pitch.
It
right?
is not. No.
Talking about historical buildings. And tell them about that, because I think that gave us a really wide audience early on.
It did. So Fiona has been dating her longtime boyfriend for a number of years, and he is also a writer, and he was also my client before they met, and I was representing their books at the same time. And I was in a meeting with Greg, and was mentioning, Fiona Davis, they have the same publisher, Dutton. And I said, there's another Dutton author, Fiona Davis. She's doing a signing. I think you should go and introduce yourself and, just like establish that relationship. And so he did. It was a rainy night. I couldn't make it into the city with my kids. And so Greg went and met Fiona, and I think it was sort of like love at first sight moment.
He was smitten.
They were smitten, and I have been trying for a number of years to place this love story with the media, and I maybe around the spectacular gave it a break or something. I don't know, but then I emailed Fiona and said, hey, I want to try this literary love story again. What do you think about that? And she's like, go for it. Great. So I pitched the book editor at People magazine, and she was like, this is exactly what I want to cover. I love this. This is great. So she interviewed Fiona and Greg for this really sweet article about their literary love story. And it just was, it went viral. People just loved it. Everyone ate it up because it's such a feel-good, bookish, literary story. And I think it. Speaking of, what makes a book a bestseller, as far as I understand it, it was quite helpful in selling books. So
yeah, and it's that kind of thing. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and people suddenly are, clicking on the buy link and pre-ordering. And the fact that we met in a bookstore on a rainy night, and that Kathleen was the one who introduced us, it was just too good to pass up.
That's amazing.
And I think what it is it helps. What publicists do when they do it well, or they help humanize the author, because the author's this dark, mysterious figure behind the words. And by showing the world who we are, I think it makes people more likely to buy the book.
Yeah, and she's so great about connecting with people and being open and sort of opening her world and her experiences to her readers, whether it's, this love story or her Parkinson's diagnosis and all of the great work that she does with the Michael J. Fox Foundation to raise awareness and money for the cause. And I think readers and fans just feel a certain special connection to her because of how warm and open she is. So... yeah, she's easy to publicize.
You can tell. You're so, that's exactly what and when we invited you to do this interview, you replied immediately, which speaks volumes, just say, she's all in. So you're busy promoting your book, and are you on the book tour? Where are you going? What's your next city, or how's it going?
Yeah, it's been very busy, and it's calmed down just recently. Greg and I just went and did a joint talk in Key West, which was really fun.
Not bad.
That looked amazing.
There.
Yeah,
that was very fun. But I have a couple smaller trips and a lot going around this area right now. So it's mainly local talks, which is great because then I can get back to work on the next book.
Great. And can we say Greg's last name?
Yeah, Greg Wands.
Okay.
And he just released his new book. Also was coming out in January with his co-author Liz Keenan. And it's called Trust Issues, and they write thrillers. So, yeah.
Awesome. So a different genre, so you can get one of each.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love it. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, just
Fiona, anything else? We're so excited to have you in our area in Washington Township in the end of April 28th. We can't wait to meet you in person. I can already tell, even through the camera, you're so approachable, right? So
it'll be fun. And also raising money for a good cause. That's
College Club of Northern New Jersey. We have an education fund. All the money raised throughout the year goes to that graduating class of senior girls. So we try to give them some funding because, as you both know, college is just staggering right now. The cost of going to college is beyond what most people can afford. So we try to do our little part in helping these girls get launched, at least.
It's terrific and completely in line with all my characters in the book. So
exactly, all your strong, smart, capable female characters. So we really appreciate it. It's like a perfect match with our mission. So we appreciate you so much for taking time out of your busy book tour schedule and being with us on Ridgewood Talks and talking about your new instant bestseller, The Stolen Queen. It's book number 8 for Fiona. I recommend all her books. They're really terrific. They all take place in New York City. Very readable, intrigue, and as I said, amazing female characters. So thank you for that. And your wonderful publicist.
Thanks for having me. It's fun to be a part of it on this side of things. So thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Fiona. We really appreciate it. And Kathleen, we'll see you April 28th at Seasons. You can get your tickets on our website at collegeclubofnorthernewjersey.org. There's a link, and you can PayPal, and then you can pick up your book ahead of time and read it, which is I would recommend. And then, Kathleen, you'll sign them at the event too, right? Is that correct?
I'll be there to sign,
You'll be there to sign. We'll get your Sharpie marker ready and all that. Okay. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you again. Thank you again.
It's a great opportunity, and it's nice to see you both.
Yeah, thank you. And please feel free to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on all your major platforms. We're on video on YouTube and Spotify. And we are produced by the fabulous Ignite Creator Studios. We're here in downtown Ridgewood, which is really amazing. I'm Rosie McCooe. I'm the guest host for Ridgewood Talks. Thanks again to our best-selling author, Fiona Davis, and her publicist, Kathleen Carter, who's also a Ridgewood resident. And please like and follow us on all of your social media platforms. And thanks for watching Ridgewood Talks.